Jake with Bond Performance, going to do a quick install video. This 26mm H&R Rear Sway Bar and Moog Rear Sway Bar end links. We've got on the higher range as far as pricing goes for rear sway bars, but it is made in Germany as opposed to a lot of the other sway bars being made in China. And on the low end of pricing, but a very durable option here, the Moog rear end links. These are greasable and actually have a dust shield on the pivot point versus some other brands are using spherical bearings, which are definitely going to wear out quick in a daily driven application, especially if you're in a harsh environment that salts the roads and things of that nature. So we're just going to get into it. Depending on which exhaust you have, you may or may not have to remove it. We're going to try it with my Bond Performance cap back in place. So we've got 13mm socket wrench and a 10mm triple square, also XYZ, something to that effect is the real name of it. I call them triple squares. So we're going to start with unbolting the sway bar end links from the control arm, and then move on to removing the actual brackets to hold them to the car. Keep in mind, with the suspension at full droop like this, there will be some tension on this hardware. To relieve the pressure on the sway bar, we're going to jack the suspension slightly. Until it no longer has load on it. That way you don't have to worry about damaging the hardware because you will be reusing it. For easy access, I'm using an extension and a reducer because my 10mm triple square is 1/2 inch drive and I'm using a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. So to make things easier, got an extension on there. So I've got plenty of room to work taking these fasteners off the car. Rather than fighting for space to get the sway bar out, I'm going to remove part of my Bond Performance catback exhaust, which is just one V-band clamp and one band clamp. Those slip fittings to fight. Now with the exhaust out of the way, there's plenty of room to remove the bar. Now, since we won't be reusing the plastic factory sway bar end links, we'll just be installing our Moog end links on the H&R bar and reusing the factory clamps on the H&R supplied bushings. And this is easier with two hands and not holding a camera. To attach the Moog end links to the bar, you'll need a 15mm backed up by an 18mm. Now that we've got our new sway bar assembly built up, we're ready to throw it on the car. There's a pretty substantial difference going from the factory 20mm solid bar to the 26mm solid bar, which may end up being too aggressive for a future coilover upgrade or a more track appropriate suspension. But for now, with my stock dampeners and VWR springs being a relatively soft spring rate, this being the thickest bar should balance out the driving dynamics of the car to significantly reduce understeer and even possibly give a little bit of oversteer. So also make sure to line up your bushings and the mounting cups as closely as you can before you go under the car, since they will require some persuasion to move them around. So I've got the sway bar in, but not completely torqued down on the brackets. The suspension's supported, so there's no tension putting the hardware through. So we can go ahead and snug this side down with it under load, so you're not getting a false torque on the shank of the bolt. You're actually getting a proper torque on the nut. We'll move on to the other side, and once it's buttoned down, we can go ahead and do our final torque on these. My only reason for leaving them loose is if the bar needs to be centered a little better. While we're tightening everything down, it won't be stuck in a binding position, which could cause squeaks. Alright, so just snugging this down, and all that will be left after the brackets are completely tight is adding the rest of my exhaust back in, and that'll be a wrap. I'll post a review after I've driven it and got some impressions in daily driving and in some spirited driving. If you have any questions, comment below, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you guys would like to see next. Thanks.